Football Tailgate SEC Preview Part 1. I'm Dan Watkins, joined as always by John McKechnie. John, this is the conference where it means more, right? Right? Does it still mean more in the SEC? Can you still use that as your moniker and your slogan when you haven't even had a team in the national championship game, let alone win one, in 3 years now?
I mean, it means more because I feel like everyone is way more defensive and triggered about it all.
Fair enough.
You ask any SEC person, and they are pretty sensitive about this. I think that, I mean, for me personally, as a Georgia guy, I never had the conference pride thing. I always thought I like Georgia. It makes me want to jump off a cliff when Alabama wins a national championship, stuff like that. But now the Big Ten has sort of co-opted the SEC level of arrogance and everything to where it's yeah, I guess I kind of want to see someone from the SEC get to the mountaintop so we can, knock the Big Ten down a peg. So I feel like I've been dragged back into this culture war that I had just consciously avoided for the entirety of my Georgia fandom. And yeah, no, I think you give any SEC fan some truth serum and they'd say they're a little sore about the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's like Twilight Zone stuff for you right now, and it's funny because the Big Ten might have they have the potential to roll out a fourth straight different national champion this year. You got a lot of people that are high on Oregon, and we're not going to get fully into Oregon and Dan Lanning's team this year, but it's really the SEC, and now they've moved to 9 games on their schedule, and it's are they just going to cannibalize each other? Is that what they're going to do at this point? So it's really interesting to see how things are going to go in the SEC in 2026.
Yeah, there's this fascinating dynamic in the whole discourse about I think nobody, even SEC fans, like the talking point our in-conference schedule is so much more brutal. That's why we're losing in the expanded playoff era and all this stuff. Nobody wants to hear that, but there is a certain level of depth where even the bad teams in the SEC are probably better than your Marylands or your Purdue's or your Northwesterns. In the Big Ten, so there are fewer in-conference cupcakes for the SEC, and now with it moving to 9 games, that's going to be intense. And I think Texas is a team that you really look to this year in that sense, because all of a sudden you are really, I mean, Texas learned this the hard way last year. You're really disincentivized to have much of a tough non-con schedule. And what do
Sure.
they have? They've got Ohio State week 2, so that's. You're already facing a bit of a gauntlet in conference, and then you have a game that you very well could lose at home very early on in the season. It can kind of rattle you and get you off track for the whole season. That kind of stuff I think becomes a lot more interesting with the expanded or the additional in-conference game.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're kind of just tiptoeing into this here and dipping our toes in it, but is the SEC now the second best conference in America? When it comes to college football, you mentioned the depth there, and I like that point and the point that you're making, that there are teams in the middle that kind of do prop up the SEC more so, where the Big Ten, as great as they've been at the top, and 3 straight national champions, 3 different national champions here. You got Oregon lurking for a potential 4th one in a row. Ohio State obviously still going to be good. Michigan, people are expecting to bounce back with Kyle Whittingham. You got whatever Lincoln Riley's doing out there in Southern California and in USC. And then obviously Indiana, who just don't doubt them. Right? Even with a new quarterback and all these new pieces, I'm sure Coach Sig is going to have them ready to go. But I don't know. Bill Connolly writes in his SEC preview, quote, right, the SEC has been going through a bit of an existential crisis of late. The league that demanded you judge it all by its national championships, 13 of them in 17 seasons between 06 and 22, is suddenly in a drought, with the Big Ten winning 3 straight titles. SEC teams have claimed only 2 of the 8 spots in the semifinals of the first 2 12-team college football playoffs. So what is wrong here, John? What is going on in SEC land?
It's hard to make sense of it. I mean, they get a bunch of teams in, but they tend to underperform. I think Georgia is, kind of chief among them as far as these teams that just, that Georgia's had the bye, I think, in each of the first 2 years, and they haven't been able to get to the semifinal for first round bow outs for them in both of those years. And then, Ole Miss was knocking on the door. I mean, they very much had a chance against Miami last year, I felt like, but you had Oklahoma and Alabama, nix each other, and then Alabama just pretty much no-showed in the Rose Bowl. So I can't exactly pinpoint what the issue is for this team, and I think generally, if you zoom out, like Indiana is the only team I think so far, right, that's won a game despite having a bye in the first round. So I mean,
Right.
that's not just an SEC problem. That seems to be an everybody problem, unless you are Indiana. So um, it's it's one of the life's great mysteries right now in this era.
I think this NIL era that we're in is a big reason why that we're seeing this, right? Where you look at some of those Georgia teams from 5, 6 years ago, and those Alabama teams that we saw in 2019 LSU, like all those schools were like, I don't know, what, three deep at every position, it felt like. Where now, like, some schools are like, if they have one guy who's it's impressive, and let alone do they have a backup or even a third stringer like some freshman or whatever. But the way that like the money has diversified and split out, I think is playing a huge part, and we're seeing this, right, where in the transfer portal, where guys, like, they're not going to sit around and wait for their turn anymore. Like, they're going to go try to play immediately, and then they'll jump ship maybe to go back to a bigger school or something like that, which we've seen. But I think the NIL era has kind of like really chipped away at that armor and the shield of the SEC.
Yeah, and like I think you look at the Big Ten. The Big Ten people love talking about this one. Like their schools are by and large richer than the SEC ones. Like so, they have a bigger ability to pull guys from the state of Florida or Texas or wherever and get them to come up to their cold weather schools just because they can kind of come over the top with the money a little bit. Like Texas and A&M are the two SEC teams that really have like the fiscal jackhammer, as it were. But like it feels like a lot of these elite programs in the Big Ten are able to throw it around a little bit more. I mean, I think one of the big stories that people were talking about during Indiana's run last year is like, wait a second, Indiana has the biggest alumni base in the country. Like we did we just never realize that until just now? And it's like, okay, like now Indiana has a legit bankroll to build a football program that's going to be competing and winning national championships. So like the SEC can kind of, they don't have that sort of monopoly on the in-state talent because other programs in the Big Ten or Big 12 in the case of Texas Tech, they can come in over the top with their offers a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of just mentioned in-state talent too. Like, is the rise of Miami like just like all like that impact and that effect, like just like taking away from the SEC too? What Mario's been able to do that there down in South Florida, like keeping a lot of those guys in state and having them go to Miami, and we see Miami go to the national championship game, like. That just kind of popped into my head too. Like that might be another reason why the SEC is down a little bit from years past because, well, we see another former power in Miami has come back to life.
Absolutely. There's always kind of like that great three-way tug of war in the state of Florida between UF, FSU, and Miami. And right
It's the
now,
Florida three-way.
yeah, man, it's spicy. And Miami just seems they have the better grip, better position. They have the high ground right now, and they're able to kind of come in over the top. Like I think we're at a point now where if you're a fan of a certain team who has a high level recruit, and then it gets rumored around that Miami's sniffing around that guy, you get a sense of dread. It's like Miami could very well flip this guy, that guy, whoever. Like they've done very very well at just sort of like, oh, okay, like this guy is on a Georgia or an LSU or an Alabama's radar. That's nice. Well, we can just go ahead and offer them a little bit more and get them. And it's an easy sell too, because it's Miami for crying out loud on top of it all. And Cristobal just a great recruiter as it is. So we're seeing like another program basically come back online after being largely dormant from like a national relevance standpoint for the better part of 2 decades. Now all of a sudden Miami very very much like it just at the big boys table, no question.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. All the resources there at Mario's disposal down there in Coral Gables. But anyways, guys, if you're new here, thank you very much for listening or watching. We are College Football Tailgate. We will be bringing you probably 2 shows a week here from now until I would say, end of January.
Yeah.
At this point, maybe getting close to February school vacation for some of the high school kids. But anyways, do us a favor, like the video and hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. We are College Football Tailgate. You can find us at that handle, at College Football Tailgate, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Hit that follow or subscribe button. It means a lot to us as we continue to try to build this show as we head into year 2 of doing this podcast with you guys. You can follow us on Twitter at CFB Tailgate 25, and of course head over to TikTok where all the fun is at CFB Tailgate. So big things coming in year 2, big things coming for a lot of these SEC schools. And one last thing, if I could just, as I stand on my soapbox here, is just tell a friend, right? If you got a friend, a buddy, a pal that's looking to get into a little more college football or just loves college football and needs more shows to listen to and more content and all that kind of stuff, tell them about us. It would help us out greatly, and we really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, we got great off-season stuff. Obviously, we're doing all these previews. In season, 2 episodes. We recap on Mondays. We preview on Thursdays. We got best bets every single week. We had a week last year. We were, like 12-2 or something? So there were some other works that maybe weren't quite as good, but sometimes we can print some absolute bangers, folks. So just keep us in mind.
Definitely. Very good. All right. So, John, there's so many storylines in the SEC this year. I mean, one of the big ones just generally is this nine conference game schedule, which it's going to be really interesting to see as we were kind of talking about. Do these teams just cannibalize each other, right? Do they just beat each other up so badly in the regular season that no one's left standing come playoff time, right, to make that deep run? But there are, without kind of rehashing that, there are a lot of other interesting storylines here, and I'm laughing because, well, we both have it as our top storyline on our rundown here, and it's the Texas hype machine. We're going to preview Texas in full in a few minutes, guys, but just like to kind of like set the table with this. Last year going into 2025, we had things like people like Paul Feinbaum talking about how Arch Manning could be the best college football quarterback that we've seen since Tim Tebow 15 years ago, and that Texas was, poised to be this just absolute superpower and juggernaut. And then, well, they went out, they lost to Ohio State. They end up losing to Florida later on. They go to Georgia and lose. They finish 10-3, don't even make the playoff. But now the hype train, I don't want to say it's off the rails because I feel like it's a little more justified this year with what we saw, how Texas ended the season in 2025 with some of the pieces that they add again, some of that we were talking about depth earlier. It feels like Steve Sarkisian has really added some nice depth pieces too to that offensive line, which I think is the key to everything with Texas here. But it feels like they have opened the war chest and they are ready to go and ready to fire at all cylinders. So I'm excited to see, do they actually live up to the hype or do they fall flat on their face?
Yeah, I'm definitely more willing to listen to Texas hype this time around. I think last year I was pretty dug in on being like, we are anointing them way too soon, off of like 2 starts that Arch Manning had made the year prior. There was a lot of reason to be like, hang on, I gotta actually see this in person in real time before I can actually buy in. And Texas obviously had that rocky start to the season. And like they played better at the end of the year for sure, but they still didn't really look like a juggernaut to me. I mean, like they even that win against Texas A&M, like it's a quality win, like probably the best they looked. But at no point was I like, okay, Texas is scary last year. But I think that there were some issues that they had. They were kind of soft on defense, and they couldn't run the ball particularly well. C.J. Baxter just wasn't himself, and Wisner, for whatever reason, just wasn't as good as he was the year prior. The receivers had a bunch of drop issues, and Arch had his own problems for the first half of the season or so. But as you saw things kind of smooth out and correct over the course of the season, plus you consider the transfer portal additions that they made, like I'm much more open to like hearing the hype case for Texas this year as opposed to where I was a year ago, where I'm like, hold your horses.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you. We will talk about Texas in depth, more in depth in just a few minutes. What else you got for storylines here in the SEC heading into 2026?
I mean, you can't do storylines without Lane Kiffin, right? I mean, he is
just LSU. LSU just can't stay out of the news. And don't you dare say number 5. We don't have the rights to that number.
Yeah, I mean, that Jaden Daniels story is preposterous, and like it just keeps getting like more acrimonious. Like it was so like out of nowhere too. But Lane Kiffin, I'm excited to see him at LSU. I mean, it was obviously such a tumultuous transition for him leaving Ole Miss at the end of the regular season, not being able to coach the Rebs for the playoffs, going over to LSU. They got a game against Ole Miss early on in the season this year that I think is going to be absolute must-watch TV. I think one of the most exciting matchups that we're going to get this whole year. So, with LSU, we've like come back and talked about this before as it pertains to Indiana sort of like ruining any sort of grace period that the coaches get. Like, you definitely aren't going to get a grace period if you're LSU with Lane Kiffin now, with the sheer amount of money on that roster. I think, you hear it rumored that it's like a $40 million roster. Okay, well, now you have to at least make the playoff. Like that's just sort of like maybe it's a little unfair to be like, yeah, they got to win the national title. Like I don't put them in that national title or bust type of category, but if they don't make the playoff, we're off to a bad start all of a sudden, and that's a lot of pressure. But I think that if you're Lane Kiffin, if you're LSU, you kind of invite that and you revel in it. But this is just, it's going to be a fascinating story to see just kind of like how LSU is able to come together, because on paper, tons of talent. Like we love this roster, but like, are they going to be able to play cohesive together for this entire gauntlet of a season?
Yeah, and I love the coaching staff that Lane's assembled too, with Charlie Weiss Jr. coming over as offensive coordinator. Obviously, Kiffin's going to call plays, which he tends to do, and then keeping Blake Baker as defensive coordinator too is huge. I think that's a sneaky, huge move when it comes to coaching hires and or retaining coaches and all that kind of stuff. But to kind of piggyback off your Lane storyline, how about just first-year coaches in the conference in general? Right? You got John Summerall in Florida. Like, is that going to translate with him? Like, he's never won fewer than 9 games as a head coach in 4 seasons so far at both Troy and Tulane. Alex Golish, did Auburn find the right guy? Right? Bringing him over from USF. You got some other new coaches at places like Kentucky and Will Stein and Arkansas. So, like, all the different first-year coaches, right? Who hits the ground running, who looks totally out of place. It's all very fascinating, and I can't wait to see how all that plays out.
Yeah, Auburn, it feels like has been chasing its tail as far as its coaching decisions for, the better part of the last decade or so. Like after like it started to become clear that like Gus wasn't going to be the guy to like usher them into the new era. You bring in Brian Harsin, that was a disaster. And then, Hugh Freeze, like it was worth a shot, I suppose, but that obviously didn't work out particularly well either. So Golish, at least, like, he's a different genre of coaching hire, someone that had a ton of success at the G4 level or G5 level. Is he going to be able to make that transition? And like, it's, we talk about it with Oklahoma State, right? In a way where it's like, oh, they bring all of North Texas. Like, this is going to be totally fine. I feel like we're not really giving Auburn that same level of like, oh, this is going to be really fun. Because, he brings over so many guys from that USF team, including the quarterback and Byron Brown. So is Auburn going to be able to kind of, or is that formula one that's going to be able to actually compete in the SEC? I think is one of those fascinating things that really keeps Auburn on my radar this year.
Yeah, and then don't forget too, speaking of first-year head coaches, it's like, I don't know, first-year head coach, but with like an asterisk because, well, he did get the entire playoff to coach too, and that's Pete Golding at Ole Miss. What does this look like, right? Was that just a sugar high for those few weeks in the college football playoff a year ago? Trinidad Chambliss is going to be the starting quarterback again, so obviously there are some pretty lofty expectations in Oxford to get back to the playoff and make another run there. But like, I'm really interested to see how this looks with a full season, a full off season for Golding, and what this looks like for the Rebs in 2026.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what this Ole Miss product looks like. I mean, I think we love Trinidad Chambliss. He's one of the best quarterbacks in college football, but I mean, last year's such an anomaly. Like at the end of the season, like it was so chaotic, and they were able to kind of rally around it and make a deep run in the college football playoff. So how much are they going to be able to sustain? They were able to like kind of win some battles with Lane Kiffin to keep some of that roster intact, but they did lose a decent amount of guys as well. And I think you crucially mentioned like the Charlie Weiss loss. Some of those guys behind the scenes that were kind of helping this thing go these last couple of years in Oxford. What's it going to look like with Golding as the guy? I think the players love him. I do think like that was something that you can really takeaway from the playoff run last year. Like he definitely connects with his guys, and like they are ready to go under him. So there is something to be said for that. But they've got a brutal schedule as well this year, so it's going to be fascinating to see if they're able to hold up as adversity starts to face them a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. That week 3 game, cannot wait. LSU, Ole Miss, just it's going to be absolute cinema. The Scorsese meme, without a doubt, for that game. Then my last little storyline here is just it kind of dovetails here with all this. Is just who falls flat, right? Who's the unexpected team that just can't get their bleep together this year and just looks like a total mess? I'm not really sure who it's going to be. I have some. Actually, I do have a thought, and I'm going to save it because we're going to talk about this team in a little bit. But I don't feel like that team has massive expectations. So it's interesting to see and to think about, right, who could potentially just have the rug ripped out from underneath them and just slip and fall, face plant, banana peel, all that kind of stuff. That interests me too.
I have an idea of who that might be, and I think we might be in agreement. So I'm excited to see the reveal on that.
Very good. So here's what we're going to do, guys. We're going to talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. We're going to talk about the Texas Longhorns. We're going to hit on Oklahoma. Who else? Tennessee, Florida. And then we're going to make John say some nice things about schools like Kentucky and Auburn and Missouri before we wrap up the show here. But starting things off, let's dive right into it. And let's talk about, the favorite to win the SEC this year. And that's the Georgia Bulldogs. John, your dogs, plus 260. To win the SEC. They are minus 240 to make the college football playoff. They are 8-1 to win the national championship, which I think is fifth or sixth, maybe fourth, fifth, sixth, right in that tier there, right below the Ohio State and Notre Dame teams right there at the top of the odds board. You got a win total of 9.5 or 10.5, depending on the juice for Georgia. They are 9th in returning production, according to Bill Connolly, 4th in preseason SP+. They bring back 14 starters this year, which is tied for the second most in the FBS. It feels like Kirby's got everything kind of geared up and ready to go for 2026 to make that push to get back to the mountain.
So we've seen Georgia win a national championship with less than top tier quarterback play. 2021, it was until the clock struck zero in Indianapolis. I wanted Stetson Bennett to be benched for JT Daniels, until the very last second, basically.
Hang on to that take.
So, but the following year, Stetson was a lot better. So, is Gunnar Stockton going to improve? I think it is the big thing, because I think you look at the rest of this roster and how it's set up. There's so much to like. I think the trenches, the offensive line looks great to me. I think the defense is going to be the best in the country, or if not, you're right in that mix. They've got a deep backfield. They've got probably the best tight end room in college football. The receivers can probably leave a little bit something to be desired. But, last year, it was also a very good roster, but Stockton he's very limited, right? You watch a Georgia game, and their passing game was 40% of it was just, all right, let's do the Zach Branch screen for a first down play. And it worked. If it ain't broke, why are you trying to fix it? But Branch is no longer there. And again, I mentioned this group of tight ends. I think Stockton, I had it written down somewhere yet that he only completed 43 passes to those tight ends last year. He doesn't access the entirety of the field, it feels like especially over the middle where those tight ends are roaming. He's not looking there. And he needs to get better at getting through his progressions and finding those guys, because if you just get it in the area, a guy like Elias Williams is going to come down with it and make a big chunk play. They need to just maximize as far as that goes, because I think everything else on this team suggests that they can go really far, but Stockton and his improvement in year 2 as the starter, I think it is going to be the make or break detail for this Georgia team.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is. And I completely agree with you, and I wrote this down, right? Which version of Gunnar shows up on a week-to-week basis is going to determine how this season goes. Now, it's we're not asking him to be the guy that went up to Tennessee last year and threw for, close to 400 yards in that game or whatever. He doesn't need to be that, right? But he needs to take care of the football, keep moving the chains. Kind of I really liked the way he played against Alabama in the SEC championship game, where he was just constantly moving the chains. He did a lot more with his legs, I feel like, in that game than his arms still. But we do need to see that growth from Gunner, as you were mentioning. And it feels like just like all the pieces are there. And it feels like this team last year at points was just a little young, right? A little wet behind the ears, if you will, where now they're much more experienced and there's not going to be those excuses there. And we'll see who steps up out of that wide receiver room. Because as you mentioned, though, the strength of this team and this offense is going to be in the backfield and in the tight end.
Right. So the receivers, I mean, people have been telling tall tales about Sokovie White for feels like years at this point. So let's see what he can do now that he's going to be thrust into a bigger role. Canyon that comes over from Georgia Tech, I think it was. London Humphreys is a nice little kind of like X factor. As you're like
big game player.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he loves to make plays on 3rd and 4th down. He's a lot of fun. So those guys, good. Stockton, it's just, again, a matter of like, what does this progression look forward? Can Mike Bobo put him in position to succeed as the offensive coordinator? Again, now that we don't have like that kind of trump card in our pocket, which was just always get it to Branch and he is going to figure it out. I don't know if they have a guy that has that same kind of dynamic ball in his hands type of ability the way that Branch did. So that's going to be interesting to see how that all unfolds. But again, you got the offensive line, got the good backfield. Stockton is like such a gamer, he's pretty much willing to put it all on the line at all times. So you gotta love that about him. Like it is between the ears mentality. But yeah, it's just until I see it, I'm gonna be a little bit nervous about him, especially in a sort of back and forth game like what we saw against Ole Miss in the playoff. Obviously, he won the first game against Ole Miss, which was a total back and forth game as well. So he has that ability, but he needs to, it can't just evaporate on him the way that it did in the Sugar Bowl or against Alabama in the first matchup last year. So he's sort of the bellwether. Like as he goes, so do the dogs.
Yeah, and luckily for Gunner, though, as you were kind of just hinting at, he might not have to do all that much every single week because, well, this defense is going to be really good, as John was just talking about. They were number 2 in the league in scoring defense last year, allowing less than 18 points per game. They were number 2 in run defense a year ago, allowing just over 80 yards per game. And now they bring back 21 defensive players who played meaningful snaps at Georgia or somewhere else a year ago. This defense is going to be, I don't know if I want to say elite, but it's going to be very, very, very good this season.
I'm interested to see how they replace C.J. Allen. That's really the only
linebacker.
Yeah, because he was the guy that was pretty much the quarterback of the defense essentially. So getting him replaced will be key. But I mean, you look at like pretty much every level of this defense, like Griffin, Ellis Robinson, KJ Bolden, DeMello Jones. DeMello Jones is like my favorite, like just real physical corner. He just like totally suplexed Emmett Mosley in that Texas game. That was like one of my favorite plays of the year last year. They've got guys everywhere, and they importantly got better as the season went on. They were all like freshmen and sophomores last year. So this is a big opportunity for them to have a defense that kind of looks a little bit like those title runs from the earlier part of this decade, because I think that they all got that meaningful experience. They're all back. They don't have to think. They can just go out there and play fast. Now, I mean, we saw their progression over the course of last season where every week it felt like we sat down on Mondays like, where the hell was the pressure? Like where was the pass rush? And eventually they started to get it. We saw in that game against Alabama in the SEC championship game, and like the contrast of that versus the first one where Ty Simpson is just sitting back there and hanging out pretty much for the entirety of that game. So the pass rush got better. The defense I stand by it. I do think it is going to be, if not the best, I think it's top 3 at worst.
Yeah, I agree with you. And let's take a look at the Dogs' schedule here. As I mentioned, their win total is either a heavy juice 9.5 minus 180 on DraftKings to the over, or you have a 10.5 where you can get that with like a plus 160 for Georgia to win 11 games. But John, this thing, it ramps up big time at the end of September, starting with Oklahoma there. But you got trips to Alabama. Obviously, you get Florida again, as always. We'll see what they are. But a trip to Oxford and Ole Miss. Georgia Tech always finds a way to make things sweaty for Georgia at the end of the season there. A trip up to South Carolina too. But how do you feel? 9.5, 10.5. What's your prediction with Georgia?
I'll take the over 9.5, but and pay the juice. I can't quite get there for 10. I do think that they're going to lose at Alabama. that's what they do. They haven't won in Tuscaloosa since like I was a kid. And I think that one of Oklahoma or Ole Miss in particular, I think are going to be that's going to be a really difficult spot. And South Carolina is such a live wire. I know it's been a little bit since Georgia and South Carolina played, but if South Carolina, we're not breaking them down today, but they're so variable and volatile. We saw them coming in with hype in 2023, and they flopped, and then everyone forgot about them in 2024, and then they were playing some of the best football of anybody towards the end of that season. They flopped last year, so if the trends hold for how Beamer teams tend to behave up there in Columbia, then South Carolina, that could be a dangerous spot. Williams-Brice has been kind of a house of horrors for Georgia for quite some time, so that's another potential trip up spot in there along the way. So I like Georgia to get to 10 wins. I stop short of 11 though, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Just that number's just so beat up that I can't really get behind it or want to put any actual money there. Georgia should be a double-digit win team here. I expect them to once again, as it seems like they always are now, be in the SEC championship game. That's a different way I'm looking at betting Georgia this year. You got like a plus 120 out there for Georgia to just make the SEC title game, and that's how I'm looking to bet the Dogs from a future standpoint here. But I do expect them to make a deep run into the month of January there. Things should be set up nicely, and as long as they don't slip up in both those games, I feel like against Alabama and at Ole Miss, I should be feeling pretty good about my ticket there.
I would think so as well. So those are the big pressure spots for this Georgia schedule, and again, keep an eye for that South Carolina game. The Auburn game can be a little bit funky sometimes. Kirby versus mobile quarterbacks that's sort of his kryptonite sometimes. Byron Brown certainly unbelievable as like a just kind of an electric playmaker. So that could be interesting, but that one is in Athens, so I do think that they'll get that done, but it could be a little bit uncomfortable. I mean, obviously, like the Auburn game last year was very, very close to being a really tough night for the Dogs. So all that being said, I think we're looking at a 10-win team that makes the CFP. Whether or not they win the title comes down to Gunner Stock.
Well said. Completely agree with you. All right, moving on. Texas, right? You want to talk about hype and expectations and all that kind of stuff. Well, look no further than Austin, Texas. The Longhorns, John, their win total is sitting at 9.5 right now, plus 120 to the over. They are plus 310 to win the SEC, minus 200 to make the playoff, plus 750 to win the national title. They are 6th in returning production, according to Bill Connolly, and also 6th in preseason SP+, right? They opened up that war chest in the offseason with just one of the sexiest transfer classes you will ever see in college football. I don't really know how else to describe it, but what they brought in with Cam Coleman and the running backs and the guy at linebacker too, like it is hop aboard this hype train with what Steve Sarkisian's got going on. And we kind of started to talk about it, right? Will they actually live up to this? Is it deserved? I mean, it feels like, to me, I'm looking at this roster and I feel like I'm playing like college football, EA Sports College Football 26, and I'm in like year 5 of my dynasty, and I've just built this thing, and it just looks like ready to go, and I'm just going to just slaughter everyone.
It's a machine, man. I mean, that is a terrifying roster. So if Arch can be the guy that we saw in November and December last year, then I feel great about this Texas team making it to the college football playoff and potentially making a pretty sizable run from there. I can't wait for that Ohio State game early on in the season. I kind of think right now the Texas has a pretty good chance of getting back at them this year. It's going to be at DK Royal. It's going to be hot.
Hot right now.
I feel good that Texas is going to be able, if they're able to do that, then you're feeling great about where you're if you're taking the over on that win total. It's just 9.5, but like I don't see this season playing out in a way where Texas is on the outside looking in once again for the college football playoff. And I think a game like the one against Florida last year, I don't think that happens in year 2 of Arch Manning starting. So I do think that even if they do drop that game against Ohio State, I don't see them losing more than one other game beyond that. So give me 10 wins for this Texas team. I think they're going to get there at the minimum, and I think they'll be in the CFP and looking good from there.
Yeah, I love that too. I've already put hardcore American dollars on Texas going over 9.5 at plus money. I mean, they are loaded across the board, guys. You add Cam Coleman, who might have been the best player in the portal, to a wide receiver room that already had Ryan Wingo and Emmett Mosley, and you got this stud 5-star freshman receiver too that they want to make sure they get the ball as well. You got those splashes at running back with the two-headed monster there. Now Sark addressed the offensive line, which was like the biggest need. Like some people are saying maybe he didn't do quite enough, but still he added some pieces to that O-line that should make them even better. As I was saying, I think that is the key to everything with Texas this year, is does this offensive line play well, and do they have enough up front? It looks like they do on paper, I think. And then, yeah, Arch should continue to improve as well. With all of these weapons, it is like gluttonous. And if Arch Manning isn't standing in New York City on the second weekend of December, or third weekend of December, whenever it is, then, yeah, like something went wrong. So it's Arch should continue, and it really should we should get to that point where it's just like, okay, I don't want to hear any more about Arch Manning. Like we should get to that point. I think we should get to that point rather quickly.
But yeah, I mean, like it's not Arch's fault, but like it gets a little exhausting, like the amount to which he gets talked about. Another thing, what do we always say on this show? I'm always a little bit leery about offensive lines that are built a lot through the portal.
Sure.
I think, yeah, time and reps together, it was more important than a guy's transfer rating on three. And one thing that I thought was kind of understated for that Texas team last year versus the year before, in 2024, I thought that looked like the defense looked the closest that I had seen to like a Georgia level defense in recent years. And last year, they had no teeth. Like they I don't know what it was, but they were not physical. They were not like, flying to the ball. I think that bringing in Muschamp is going to be able to help that. I think they're going to play a lot faster and a lot more physical this year on that side of the ball. They certainly have the guys to do it. Like, no excuses. Like they've got guys that are going to be first round picks on that side of the ball. They just need to play like it. So if that defense takes a step forward, I think that's a big deal for them. And then, kind of alluded to it earlier on in the show, but like the run game was sort of out of sorts last year, and that, having that be a bit of a weak spot for them, it gave Arch a lot less cover, and it made him a lot more like exposed out there in the early parts of the season, as we saw. So making it a priority to get Raleek Brown and Hollywood Smothers in addition to Cam Coleman out wide, I think that's going to give their run game a lot more oomph to it, and I think to like take some of that pressure off of Arch, where like if the defense isn't ready to stop that run, like they're going to get in trouble very, very quickly.
Yeah, this defensive line for Texas is just nasty. Colin Simmons is an absolute freak. He led the SEC in pressures as a sophomore a year ago. He's back for his junior season. Obviously, Muschamp's going to be sending him after the quarterback every single play. You got Lance Jackson on the other side. And then one of the sneaky big pickups of the portal is the linebacker there, Rasheem Biles, who people really, really like to be in the middle of that defense there too. So Will Muschamp, while Bill Connolly in his SEC preview points out, has not overseen a top 10 defense since 2014. I think he's got all the pieces there to break that trend and be looking pretty good here in 2026. Let's just quickly look at Texas's schedule here. As we were talking about, they have a win total sitting at 9.5. And John, there are some big spots here, but immediately, like what jumps out to me is no Georgia, no Alabama on this schedule. You get Ohio State at home. You got a couple of sneaky big road trips here at Tennessee at the end of September, right before Red River. There is a bye week, I believe, in there too. And then you got trips to LSU in the month of November, and of course at Texas A&M, where they are going to be wanting some revenge for what happened a year ago.
So yeah, that's a pretty meaty schedule there, and again, like, they're sort of one of the few teams out there. It's one of the unfortunate trends in college football now, where it's like the great non-con early season stuff is going by the wayside in large part, but at least Texas and Ohio State are giving us something in the early part of the season. So it's not just all these games with 40 plus point spreads. So that's a huge game. That's obviously one of the biggest, if not the biggest game that we're going to see this season, at least out of conference. But I think the rest of that SEC gauntlet itself, it is fairly manageable. I mean, like you said, the Ole Miss game, LSU and A&M, they're going to have to win 2 out of those 3 games to keep pace. But I think they can do it. They at least, like, I think Texas, for as much as they pound their chest and everything, like, I think they would at least concede they absolutely have to get those games done in order to make it where they want to go. I think they're going to get there. I think that they're going to be able to kind of like put things together finally. They certainly have the guys. It's just a matter of actually executing. Like, I think the hype was a little premature last year. I think it's a little bit more warranted this time around. I'm open to the idea of Texas not just winning the SEC but also potentially the national title.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, everything about this team screams that they should be able to. If there's anyone who can go through a schedule like this and come out unblemished, I think it's this Texas roster. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure on Steve Sarkisian, and if he misses the playoff again, I don't think he's the coach at Texas going into 2027. So there is a lot at stake here for Texas, but I do think this team's going to be able to live up to the hype and make a deep run in the playoff too.
There it is. Yeah. So unfortunately, yeah, I feel like it's going to be horns up season this year. They're going to be very dangerous.
It should be. They should be. All right, so we can't talk about Texas without talking about Oklahoma. Let's head up to Norman here. Oklahoma, the Sooners, we got a win total sitting at 7.5, pretty juiced to the over at -156 for Brent Venables' squad. Right, they are 11-1 to win the SEC. They are +210 to get back to the college football playoff, and they are 30-1 at +3,000 to win the national title. They are 7th in returning production, guys, according to Bill Connolly, and 12th in preseason SP+. Right, last year, 2025, was all about, right, the return to being a contender. Oklahoma has woken up. Here we are. How do they follow it up? And John, I feel like we're right back to where we were a year ago talking about this team, where it starts and ends with a healthy John Mateer, right? He looked like a Heisman winner the first few weeks of the season before that thumb injury. And then, well, he didn't look like that at all. Obviously, he was clearly hampered. This offense, they didn't reach 400 total yards of offense one time after John Mateer suffered that thumb injury. The defense is going to be really good again, too, like they were a year ago. But they lost some key pieces from what was one of the best defensive fronts and just defensive units in all of college football. They have playmakers all over the place. But I still just have questions about this offense and as we go into 2026.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it for you, but was this the team that you were thinking about that's going to high expectations going to flop?
No, because I feel like 7 and like it's not super high expectations, and like no, we got someone else we got to talk about here in a few minutes.
Okay, all right, very good. Well, Oklahoma's my team for that. Like, as far as like it's a team that made the CFP last year that is not going to this year. I really don't have like any bad bones in my body about University of Oklahoma, but I don't know. I feel like I am always stepping on the hornet's nest and making their fans mad. But like I'm right back there. I think Mateer he's a good college quarterback, and that obviously matters. This is college football, but like I just don't feel like he's a difference maker through the air. Satenya, it was sort of like Oklahoma's version of Zach Branch last year. Like if the ball wasn't going to him, it wasn't going anywhere. So it was very, very prudent of Venables to restock that room a little bit, getting Parker Livingstone.
Arch's roommate, by the way.
Yeah, well, that's a little juicy. And then I like the Trell Harris addition too from Virginia. I thought he's a very good player as well. So you got some completeness to this wide receiver room, and you also have, very importantly, a guy named Rocky Beers coming in. How about that? We want to see that guy succeed. How
did Colorado not throw everything they had at him?
He was at Colorado State.
Okay.
He might have started at like FIU, which like a guy named Beers at FIU, like my God. But I think that he's going to be a difference maker at tight end. The reports coming out about him and how he's looking in fall camp are all very encouraging. That he's going to be a staple of this offense, but. Dan, like we talked about them so much last year, and one of the big things, yes, their defense was great, but on the other side of the ball, like in addition to Mateer being hampered, is like, where is the run game? And I'm not convinced that is fixed necessarily. I don't know if Oklahoma has a difference maker in its backfield again. Like I think that could be another part that's a little bit empty in this offense, and I think that matters a lot. If my kind of thesis about Mateer being good, not great, it rings true. You're going to need a little bit something of like some punch from that backfield. I'm not sure it's there.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like last year, it became kind of like a running joke. Like the milk carton's got Jade Knott's photo on it. Where is he? Like what happened to him, right? Blaylock stepped up in a few spots last year, but he's not even going to be the starter as of right now. They got Xavier Robinson to be the starting running back. But yeah, on defense, I think this secondary is going to be elite again. You got the two Bowen boys back there and some other nice pieces too. You got some good linebackers and like Kip Lewis. I mean, this defense is going to be really good. And with Venables in charge and running this defense, like Oklahoma's still going to be in every game. And it's just going to come down to, I feel like, kind of like the same thing with Gunnar Stockton, but maybe even more so with John Mateer. Is he going to be able to make that play? Will he make that play to pull the Sooners to victory here? So let's just take a look at their schedule. For 2026, we got that win total at a heavy juice to the over, 7.5. John, you look at this. Look at their first 5 games, man. Like, you got 3 monster matchups there before we even get to Columbus Day. And they got at Michigan, which is going to be a zoo up there in Ann Arbor. You got the trip to Georgia to close out the month of September. And then you got Red River, which is Columbus Day weekend at the Texas State Fair there. So this, to me, this team just screams 8-4. It's got it written all over it. But I'm not laying the juice for them to get to that over 7.5 wins.
Yeah, that's probably the right way to do it. I'm going to color myself a little bit more skeptical and say that they're a 7-5 team. So I'm right on the under myself. That Michigan game, I think, is really important for both sides of that, because definitely. Michigan's definitely having some existential crisis of their own. I mean, Bryce Underwood was such a big get for them. He did not look like he was it last year, and certainly that game down in Norman, like, you give him a bit of a pass because it was like his second career start, and it was down in Norman at night. But like, man, that game is sets up almost like it's going to tell you a lot about how the rest of their season is going to go, in my opinion, fair or not, with that game being so early on. But that's kind of how I'm reading it. But I think OU's they're going to be in all those games like you were saying, but I think that they're just going to come down on the wrong side of a lot of those kind of coin flips. And I think that ultimately we're looking at a disappointing season and a disappointing year or way in which to build off of a playoff run last year, which was awesome. I mean, like I felt like I had completely been put in a blender after they beat Alabama. I thought that Bama was going to smoke them. They did not, at least in the first one. Yeah, I think that this Oklahoma team has like a relatively low ceiling this year, and I think that there's a chance that we're looking at this team going into 2027 just being like, wait, what the hell happened last year?
Yeah, I feel like they had a ton of turnover luck a year ago where they just got those timely turnovers. Now this defense is very good that they could do that again, but like usually you see that regress. And that water finds its level, and it kind of felt like we had that like dam breaking moment in the college football playoff when Bama went in there and just kind of laid it to them for 60 minutes. So we'll see how that looks. It's going to be really interesting there with Oklahoma, but let's move on. Let's start talking about Tennessee here. The Vols, right? They are at 7.5 as well with their win total. We got an over at -125, so not quite as juicy. They are 17-1 to win the SEC, plus 380 to make the college football playoff. 26th in returning production, 16th in preseason SP+. But John, I'm just going to ask you, what's the identity of Tennessee football, right? Do they have one? Because, I'm not sure that they do, because we've seen this team, when I typically think of Tennessee and I typically think of Josh Heupel, I think of, an elite quarterback and a high-flying offense, defense that's going to be a little sketchy. And that's kind of what we got last year. But then you go back to 2 years ago when they made the playoffs. Well, they had a really good defense, and they ran the ball a ton, and Nico just kind of took care of the ball. So it's like, what do they want to do? They went 8-5 a year ago. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this team. And as we were talking about earlier, if there's a team that I think is going to fall flat on their face, I think it's the Tennessee Volunteers, just because I don't trust the freshman quarterback. I don't really trust Josh Heupel either. And Jim Knowles is in there as defensive coordinator, and it usually takes Knowles half a season to figure it out before things are really clicking. And when we dive into Tennessee's schedule here, it might be too little too late by the time we get to the midway point.
Yeah, you don't have that much time to figure it out. You gotta start hot and finish hot. You don't really have that grace period. I'm willing to I'm open to the idea of Faison Brandon being the real deal. I do think that he's everything I've read and seen about him is pretty encouraging, and I think even if they need to kind of protect him a little bit early on, Deshaun Bishop is I think one of the best running backs in the SEC. He's pretty serious, so it could kind of look a little bit like Nico's redshirt freshman year in that sense, where like they have that ability to have like a Dylan Sampson-esque role for Deshaun Bishop's, where he's just kind of like the engine of this offense, and then Faison Brandon just kind of complementing. But if he is a true difference maker, like we've seen Heupel's offenses go nuts if the quarterback can do what he's supposed to do in that setup. You've got Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley, who I think are both pretty encouraging players at receiver. They got some other guys that I think were big time recruits that could also step up as well. So I think that the song remains the same for this Tennessee team. I think the offense is going to be fine. It's just a matter of like, is this defense going to be that team that just is like almost a lock to give up the opponent's like best offensive day of the season, the way it seemed to be last year. So that's the big question to me for Big Orange.
Absolutely right. So last year Tennessee finishes 8-5. They gave up over 30 points in all 5 of those losses. They also gave up at least 26 points in 9 of 10 games against Power 4 teams last year. That includes Syracuse too, by the way. The one team that didn't was like Florida at the very end of the year when Billy Napier was like basically just like walking to his grave at that point. They did not get to 30 or 26 points on Tennessee. So they bring in Jim Knowles to try to fix this defense. Yeah, I got questions about that. Has he named the starting quarterback yet? Because it seems like you got 2 freshmen battling it out there, because George McIntyre is the other guy. And then they also brought in Ryan Staub from Colorado too. So like if they get into like a 3-man rotation there, which we have seen some teams do, like I don't like how that sets up for Tennessee. And that's why I have some big time questions about them. And like if they don't get to like 8 wins again, like do we start hearing some rumblings that maybe Josh Heupel enters the hot seat talk too?
I think so. He's been a guy that the hype has really rarely matched the results. Like they were supposed to be there in 2022, and that they were there almost until the very end, and then Hendon Hooker tears his ACL in that blowout loss to South Carolina. So they were almost kind of like on that cusp, and then I mean the Nico thing, I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough because he was like the poster boy, like the first like truly like massive contract that we saw in NIL. In that NIL era where like rumors of like $8 million promised to this kid, and after 2 years on campus, 1 year starting, he just up and leaves in April of that season, of that spring in 25. Is like, what is going on with that? So I mean they were able to scramble and make it work with Joey Aguilar last year. I think probably even better than most of them would have expected, but having a guy that they can hang their hat on for years to come, like Faison Brandon, I think he's going to be the guy. Let's look at the schedule and see if Tennessee is going to have that luxury to maybe like rotate out and kind of treat the first couple games as like almost like tryouts or like a live action ways of finishing up this quarterback battle, or if they're going to have to kind of like make their pick and go right away.
Yeah, so I'm pulling this up for you guys right now. Tennessee, right? You do open up with Furman. You got Kennesaw State in week 3. But other than that, John, they got a trip to Georgia Tech. That is at Bobby Dodd, week 2. That's going to be a tough spot there. You got Texas to close out the month of September. Auburn as well there in early October. But then you got Bama at Texas A&M, home LSU. I'm not quite sure what Vanderbilt's going to be this year. Obviously, Diego Pavia is gone. At Arkansas could be a tricky spot depending on how they're playing. And you also, as you mentioned, South Carolina is always just a live wire there at the end of October. So I'm firmly on the under 7.5 there. I think I can pick out 5 losses, and I'll take the under at plus money.
Okay, I'm going to be opposite. I just think that Brandon's going to be the guy that's like that next perfect fit in the Heupel offense. Maybe I completely am whiffing on this take, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. And with that, I think Tennessee can find their way to 8 wins just by outscoring some people.
Fair enough. Fair enough. They're going to have to because I'm not sure what that defense is going to look like. But we'll go head to head on that one. I believe it's Tennessee and Wake Forest that we're going head to head on so far. I like it. Let's keep battling there and see how far we can go. How many teams we're going to be different on. But let's wrap it up here, or at least the full in-depth previews here as we're getting close to that hour mark. Appreciate you guys listening. Hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, Apple, wherever you are. We really appreciate it. Let's talk about the Florida Gators, John. John Summerall's first season in Gainesville. We got a 7.5 for a win total for the Gators as well. They are plus 2,600 to win the SEC. They are plus 400 to make the college football playoff. Surprisingly, Florida is 11th in returning production, 20th in preseason SP plus. As I mentioned, it is the beginning of the John Summerall era. He is 43-12. in 4 seasons as a head coach. That includes stops at Troy and Tulane. He has never had less than 9 wins in a season. Johnny brought his strength coach with him to be on the staff, who is a former Green Beret. So I think that is huge for building culture and instilling culture. Also brings in Buster Faulkner to be the offensive coordinator, who in turn brings Aaron Philo with him. You got a really fun skill group on offense led by Jaden Baugh and Dallas Wilson, picking up Eric Singleton in the transfer portal too, and then leading receiver Vernell Brown returns. I like this defense in the front seven. It feels like there is a lot of pieces here for Florida to have a good season. John Summerall calls them a sleeping giant in one of his first press conferences. It's just, what do we get from Aaron Philo on a week-to-week basis is my big question with them. Do we get the quarterback play for Florida to get to 8 wins and hit this over ticket if you have that in your pocket?
That's my hang up. It's almost like the inverse of the Tennessee take, where I'm having this blind faith in Faison Brandon. I think I'm kind of out on Aaron Philo. I'm not so sure that he's an SEC quarterback, especially a high level one. At that, right. I could totally crow on that. I'm kind of sticking my neck out here. But I don't see much more than a game manager from him. I do love Buster Faulkner. I think that he all Georgia fans miss that guy and hated seeing him at Georgia Tech. Now he's at Florida, so he's really twisting the knife. But luckily, Philo might not have to be that great because you have Jaden Baugh. Jaden Baugh is the closest thing that we have in college football right now to Nick Chubb used to be. This absolute rocked up, just so physical, so much burst. I love watching Jaden Baugh play football. Baugh with the Baugh, bang to bang, diggy diggy. I'm jumped to boogie.
Yeah, yeah. He's awesome.
So there's that. And I think Dallas Wilson, in kind of a short spurt, so he needs to stay healthy. But in a couple of those games, particularly that game against Texas, which I think was his first game, he was just ripping them to shreds. And 4 or 5
180 yards or something like that.
Yeah, I was like, oh God, I can't deal with Florida having another one of these guys. It's been too long. I've gotten comfortable with them not having these types of players. So he's something else. Singleton obviously has some
sneaky good pickup, I feel like.
Yep, he knows how to exist in the Faulkner offense, of course, going back to Georgia Tech. So he's good. Yeah, there's a lot to like from this group. I just think that this, and I unfortunately, I thought the Summerall hire was great, especially if they weren't going to end up Lane Kiffin. I think that Summerall is a really nice plan B, and I think he's going to make Florida legit once again. But I think this year with Philo, I think they're a year away. So I think that this I registered their over under as a little bit too hot for me. I think I'm going under.
Fair enough. One other note on the quarterback position, DJ Lagway's gone, so I think at least Aaron Philo should take care of the ball, I think, a little bit better, right? He might not have that huge upside and that ability to hit the home run that Lagway had, but he's also got this kid, Tramel Jones, behind him, who decided to stick around. He's a redshirt freshman, could challenge him for some reps there too, so that will be interesting to see with Florida. On defense, I think it all starts with Miles Graham at linebacker. Front seven should be pretty good. They did allow some big plays from a year ago, but we'll see if they can dial that in there as we start to kind of just get right into Florida's schedule here. Where we got that win total sitting at 7.5 again. One thing that you'll notice right away with the non-con here for Florida this year, much different than a year ago. No Miami, no USF, so you don't have to worry about those kind of games there, like when Alex Golesh went into the swamp and won that game a year ago. But a nice little runway there to start the season with FAU and then Campbell, and then you got that trip to Auburn in week 3, followed by an Ole Miss game. But I like the over here. I'm optimistic on Summerall. Like, all the dude does is win wherever he goes, right? He's like, it's almost at the Google me Coach Sig standpoint with Summerall so far. He's never won less than 9 games. I know, obviously, taking a huge step up into the SEC, but I like Florida to be a very frisky 8-4 and cash that ticket for me.
I mean, I know I'm like under on them, but yeah, that Georgia-Florida game is going to be a war. I think that's going to be one of the closer Georgia-Florida games that we've seen in recent years. That game is going to be at the Benz. Just like a side note opinion, they should have made this home and home for that route. It is not fun to have these neutral site games at an NFL stadium, other than the Jacksonville one. This is your opportunity to let Florida fans come up to Athens. This is your opportunity to have Georgia fans go down and experience the swamp, and you just put it in like these kind of like soulless big cathedral Mercedes-Benz and Raymond James Stadium. Like, come on. Campus. Like, I do not love these neutral site games.
Yeah, it was a golden opportunity, golden missed opportunity for the schedule makers. But anyways, you look at this Florida schedule, right? No LSU, no Bama on there either. Like, I like the ending there too. With obviously you got 2 road trips at Kentucky and at Florida State, but we don't know what either one of those schools are going to look like at that point. I feel pretty good about this schedule in Florida, and I think it's workable, and I think there's enough talent there for Florida to have a much more successful season than they did last year. But like, what is a successful season for John Summerall here in year 1?
I think they need a signature win. The record could almost be immaterial, because if you're not making the playoff, then like, who really cares? But like, if they can kind of like put on their big boy pants and get like that win that gets everybody talking about Florida again, then to me that's like a successful season, and one where it's like we're looking ahead to Florida next year, and it's like, okay, Summerall is definitely building something. If we're already just 1 year in and they've got that statement signature win already under their belt.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I like that too, and obviously that like dovetailed and piggybacked with, you got to have a winning record, I think, too. Like, you can't be 4-8 again with that signature like upset win. Like, that's not good enough for John Summerall and all the talk that he's done going into this season. All right, so let's wrap up the show here. We'll get to best bets from this group in a minute, but first let's try to say some nice things about a couple of teams here that are expected to finish towards the bottom of the conference. John, let's start with the Auburn Tigers. Can you say something nice about Auburn?
I think they're playing it in a fascinating way, like the goalish Byron Brown agenda. Where they're bringing a bunch of guys from USF over. It could be pretty interesting. It could be pretty fun. I like the goalish offense, and Brown obviously operates it at an extremely high level. So they could be like back to those Auburn years where it's like maybe they're not competing for the SEC or competing for a spot in the playoff just yet, but it's like, they're no picnic. They're a dangerous team. They're a team that they can pull off a couple of upsets along the way. So I think that Auburn has that chance to kind of recapture that dangerous underdog type of mantra that they were so good with under Gus Malzahn.
Yeah, some similar praise from me, right? Byron Brown, he's a fun player. When this dude's fully healthy, right? The last 2 seasons we've seen him fully healthy, guys, 2023, 2025. He's had over 4,000 all-purpose yards in both of those campaigns, right? So, like, and he could potentially, if he's healthy, lead Auburn to having a top 40 offense. Top 40, nothing crazy, for the first time since 2019. So they got a dude at quarterback. We'll see about everything else, but that's what I got for Auburn. What I can say something nice about them. How about Mizzou? Eli Drinkowitz. I'll start here. Like, Drink's a hell of a coach. Just got handsomely rewarded for it, making over $10 million a year, right? Like, Drink might be one of the most underrated, if not the most underrated coach in college football with what he's been able to do at Missouri the past couple of years. And if he's healthy, now this is a big if. I had to remind myself of this because I totally forgot. Ahmad Hardy was shot walking out of a concert back in May. But if he's healthy and on the field, they might have the best running back in all of college football.
Yeah, I'm pretty worried about that, unfortunately, which is just a terrible situation because he's one of the best running backs in college football last year, and you figured, this year would be his springboard into being potentially, a first or second round pick in the NFL draft. So that's a huge question mark. But I will say I love the Austin Simmons pickup. I know that like
Really?
we have like very little to go on in terms of like real game sample, but I think he's super promising as a player. I think that he had the bad luck of getting Wally pipped last year, hurting his ankle early on, and then how do you put the genie back in the bottle once Trinidad Chambliss starts working his magic, right? So there was just like that's just like a brutal kind of run out for Simmons. So he gets to start fresh. Guy Caden Lee comes over from Ole Miss as well. So I think the pass game could actually be pretty good as well. And if Hardy's even remotely what he was a year ago, then all of a sudden you have like a very balanced offense that can hurt you in a huge variety of ways. I will say if Hardy's not himself, Jamal Roberts, I think is a guy that a lot of people have some optimism for as well. So even if Hardy is not Hardy, there's still a chance here that Mizzou can pound that rock.
Yeah, definitely. And then finally, how about Kentucky? We got a win total at 4.5 for the Wildcats. Year one for Will Stein. Anything nice to say about them?
Man, well, you got no expectations now. Like you're the guy that has to follow up Mark Stoops. One of the best coaches, if not the best coach in Kentucky football history. So the fans are going to be patient with you, and I think the 4.5 is about right. Like it's going to be kind of a long year in Lexington, but if Kenny Minchie's a guy, I mean, you're Kenny Minchie knower from his days at Notre Dame.
I know him.
They didn't give that job to CJ Carr until very late on in camp. Like Minchie like made that an actual battle. He's pretty interesting. Like he's one of those mystery box quarterbacks that like if he pops up correctly, like all of a sudden Kentucky looks like actually pretty fun out there. And I am a believer in Will Steins generally. I thought that was a good enough hire for Kentucky, all things considered. So I got my eye on their quarterback in particular that could make them pretty interesting this year.
Yeah, like basically how I feel about Kentucky is like they shouldn't be a total bore.
Yeah.
This year, like they shouldn't be a total snooze fest where it's just like, oh, Kentucky, like okay, I don't need to watch this.
Next.
But yeah, I just to kind of just further what you were saying, I like Will Stein, I like Kenny Minchie a lot, and then CJ Baxter coming over from Texas too, a running back. So you got a nice little trio there that like some nice little pieces where they could be like one of those frisky teams, but overall, like, and we'll get to this in best bets. I don't see this team getting to 5 wins. Like I do think it will be another losing season there in Lexington.
Yeah, I will be surprised if they make it to a bowl game. I think the combination of like the additional conference game plus just like all that roster turnover and getting things together in year one under a new coach, it's a big tall order to see them getting to 6 wins. But I think they'll end that season and be like, you know what, 27, we could make a bowl game.
Sure. I like that. Yeah, we're laying the groundwork there for 2027. All right, guys, well, let's wrap things up with some best bets. John, we talked about half of the league here. What do you got for best bets with these teams?
Give me Texas Tech, or sorry, give me Texas to win the national championship at plus 750. I mean, I don't love those odds, but for a national championship bet, but you'd like to get a little bit more value, but I do think that Texas is on that very short list of teams that I could actually see hoisting the trophy at the end of the season. By virtue of that, I like their over at 9.5. It's like if they're going under, then they're not going to make the college football playoff again, and then Austin is just burning at that point. I'll take the over on Tennessee's wins at 7.5 as well, and I'll take Mizzou's over. I'm just putting my blind faith in Austin Simmons getting it done.
Good. All right. I got Georgia to reach the SEC title game at plus 125. Like that at plus money, it just feels like Georgia's just there every single year, and I expect them to get to Atlanta again at the end of the season. I'm going to go Texas over 9.5 at plus 120. I think the Longhorns have all the talent and everything, and like they're going to be able to put it together where they can get through that just like brutal schedule that they're working with against this season. I'm going to go Tennessee under 7.5 at plus money, plus 105 on DraftKings. We'll go Florida over 7.5 at plus 130 on DK as well. And then finally, to wrap things up, I'm going to go Kentucky under 4.5 wins at plus 124. They'll be more fun. They won't be a total snooze fest, but I don't see them really stacking wins in the win column there, so to speak.
No, going to be a long year for Kentucky, but if they can just kind of hang in there, then I think they'll end up being happy.
Keep your head up.
Yeah. Kentucky's just in a weird place. Their basketball program's all out of sorts, so like that just makes everything, I think, worse for people up in the bluegrass states. So see if they can get things together, get things on track. And if CJ Baxter, a year further removed from that gruesome knee injury, if he looks like he did pre-injury, that's him and Minchie. That could be a pretty dynamic combo.
It could be. The only thing I'm not really fully here for right now with Kentucky is it feels like Kentucky, out of all the schools in the country, to do if Indiana can do it, it kind of feels like they are like the poster child for that. And like, why don't we try doing what Indiana did a couple years ago, where we have a winning season and just get to the playoff before we're talking about bringing in all that money and all that kind of stuff. And there were so many other extenuating things there with Indiana that made that work, where I don't think Will Stein is quite Coach Sig at this point in his career. So a lot there with Kentucky that we're working with.
Very, very tall order to I mean, I wouldn't call my shot like that if I was Kentucky, but I guess you got to get people interested and invested in the football program somehow.
Right. All right, so that's going to do it with part one of our SEC preview. Thank you very much for watching or listening. Hit that subscribe button. We'll be back in the next few days with part two to wrap up this conference here as we get closer and closer to kickoff, guys. We are a little over a week away from week 0, and then week 1 is right around the corner, or 2 weeks. I don't know. I'm losing track at this point here with so much going on.
Summer's too long.
It's awesome. It is. It's a long summer this year. We're getting closer. Appreciate you guys. Hit that subscribe button. For John, I'm Dan. We'll talk to you guys next time.